Acolytes. AI will destroy VA's voice actors and the gamers will cheer. I agree with this to 100%. At the start already, yes. And thank you for showing me this for my Acolytes. Share this with me. Let's just see what he has to say about it. It's maybe a bit of an order 13 days, but hey, if you're undead as me, well, it has nothing to do with it, but for F's sake, F this did now. Let's just do it.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Gary. I'm a voice actor, I'm a gamer,
Hi,
and
Gary.
I'm a PhD in AI voice stuff. Today I wanted to talk about
Ooh,
the thing that every voice actor is absolutely terrified of. That is actually understanding why AI is predicted to completely obliterate the voiceover industry. And in order to understand this, we actually have to understand something that is seemingly unrelated to AI, the social side of the voiceover industry. As I'm sure many of you know, there's been a massive controversy with the video game voiceover strike and the Genshin Impact strike. My voiceover mentor, Joe Zizia, who I greatly respect, recently released a video on this topic. So the video...
Yeah, and by the way, the entire thing, yes, there is controversy about the VA stuff, purely because of the effing fact that the VAs that are openly talking about the entire thing are toxic as F. And it's just another freak show.
Video got a bit of a mixed reception, and if you ask me, the release of the video was really poorly timed. A lot of people thought the video was biased in favor of the Union, and while I don't necessarily agree, I completely understand why they think that. Mostly because while he covered a lot of information about the voiceover union, what it means to go FICOR, and what a Taft-Hartley is, he chooses not to talk about.
Okay, did he actually share this one? Yep, he did. He did. Good, fair enough.
About any social aspects of the industry. In fact, he even admits it in his own video.
And that brings me to the real tricky part, the social side of things. Understand that I'm not getting to this here because this is not measurable. It is a feeling. So when we start asking questions like, why doesn't everyone just go FICOR? Or are people being blacklisted for working on non-union games during the strike? These really deal with non-measurable social feelings.
I'm not sure he intended this, but the fact that he chose not to talk about these things may have been more informative than if he had actually talked about them. Because it highlights one specific point. Voice actors cannot speak about the social aspects of the industry, and they will never talk about blacklists. Now, just to clarify, there may be some people who...
Oh, and by the way, because a lot of people that I spoke to don't believe there is a kind of blacklist in this freaking entire thing. Yeah, there is. It's basically just some people that just agree to not take a certain person. That's all that a blacklist is. And this is so easily done, so easily seen, that yeah, it's just, why not? Why not? I mean, same here, disliking people, simple as that. Yeah.
Who aren't familiar with the entertainment industry lingo, who think that a blacklist is a literal list of names. It's not really. As Joe said, the blacklist is mostly just a feeling. If you are on the blacklist, it just means that people will refuse to work with you for any possible reason outside of the merit of your own product. There are plenty of industry leaders who will deny that the blacklist exists, so you won't find very many news articles about it, but you don't need to look very hard to see that the blacklist clearly does exist. For example, let's just take a look at what started the whole Genshin Impact fiasco. When voice actor Jacob Takanashi was cast in a role that some other voice actors thought he shouldn't be cast in, they just started blacklisting him immediately. Voice actor Shara Kirby just blatantly said it. You'll never work another job again. Kaylee Mills publicized Jacob's financial information in an attempt to justify the bullying that Jacob received. Voice actor Jun Yoon, who is a prominent voice acting veteran, went out of his way to ridicule Jacob by publicly stating that he's blacklisting Jacob from his casting. Honestly, actually seeing Jun do this was really upsetting to me because up until that point, Jun was actually one of my idols. Never meet your heroes, right? Within moments of announcing his voiceover role, the industry started cutting all ties with Jacob. This happens all the time in the industry. In Jacob's case, it was because he had the wrong opinions or did something that people didn't like. But it might just be because you said something mean to someone or you criticized their work, or maybe they just think you're ugly. There's virtually no way.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's just so much bullshit things that just happens. It could be that you're just, okay, you have black hair, I don't like black hair, you're out. That's the reality of it. You can be the best effing voice actor ever, and still not get the job. You could be perfect for the job. But just because somebody doesn't like your eyebrows, you're out. I said truth.
Way to stop a blacklist from happening, and it's actually an indicator of a much larger problem in the industry. The voiceover industry has no standards. And by standards, I don't mean like a girl doesn't have standards for her deadbeat biker boyfriend.
Yeah,
I mean that the
on,
industry doesn't have a
on.
clear
Yeah,
metric
of
to
course.
evaluate a good voiceover performance from a bad voiceover performance. We can look at the field of engineering for a perfect contrast to this. Let's say two people are building a rocket. One flies 20 feet before crashing, the other flies 50 feet before crashing. That in and of itself is a metric for evaluation. Now, it might not be the perfect metric or the metric that you need to evaluate the effectiveness of a rocket, but at the very least, the metric exists. More importantly, it's possible that the guy who built the better rocket is a complete jerk. Now, you can say you don't want to work with the guy because he's a jerk and he's terrible to work with, but you cannot deny that he built the better rocket. All this is just thrown out in the voiceover industry. Their metrics are like which performance is more emotional, which one is more nuanced, which performance is more real or grounded. These things aren't really metrics because they're all opinionated. Voice directors or voice actors or casting directors, they'll always claim that they can just hear a performance and know.
Yeah, that's like with effing wine professionals. You can have the freaking worst wine in the fucking world, but if a taster says it's good, it's good. Simple as that. And it's the same with almost everything in this world. If you actually can manipulate people socially, you're better off than actually having skills. A lot of the times, not always, but in some, and it's also not everywhere, because some jobs are actually purely driven by actual flies, Arbeitsmoral, just morality to work, and aren't actually run by fucking potatoes. So, but it's getting less and less because parasites actually overtake most of those jobs and just, just want other parasites to come in so they can, basically stay and feed on people that actually can do stuff.
That's the best performance and that's the right one for the job. Put a pin in that claim, we'll come back to that later. But the truth is, one casting director might like one performance, one casting director might like another performance, and you cannot argue which one is better. It happens all the time. And this lack of standards, this conveniently flexible interpretation of what is good and what is bad is exactly why blacklisting happens. Any casting director could just argue that they weren't the right fit for the job, and there is no way to argue against it. And unfortunately, the most important social aspect of the industry is evaluation and casting. Hugh Klitsky, an amazing voiceover coach who I really respect, summarized it really well in a bit of a comedic LinkedIn post. He said this: "You didn't get the job? Here's why. You sounded like the producer's mom. You sounded like the director's ex. You sounded happy, but not the right kind of happy. You sounded too tall or too blonde or too much like everyone else, and so on." If you read through the entire post, you'll notice that there is a reason that is missing from that list. Someone else is better than you. Because as an industry veteran, he knows that the industry doesn't have those
only
metrics,
metric
at
that
least
should
not in
matter.
a way that actually matters. Because if you look at the metrics that the voice directors use, nuanced, emotional, grounded, real, you'll also notice that there's one metric that the voice acting industry generally doesn't use, and it's probably the most important metric of all: whether or not the audience likes it. And that's the only metric that actually matters. Anyone who's been paying attention to AAA video games the past few years knows that the industry, or at the very least the video game industry at large, tends to use metrics that are inversely correlated with what the audience likes. Often you'll see that the games the industry claims are high quality end up actually being the worst games when rated by the gamers. And unfortunately, the video game voiceover industry is starting to go down the same path. They've used up all their remaining goodwill with the SAG-AFTRA video game strike, and now they're starting to deny that the audience is even relevant to the industry's success at all. But when the industry stops caring about how an audience evaluates their product, it always predicts the industry's failure, and worse, predicts their takeover by AI. But if you don't believe me and you want evidence, we can look at another industry that's been just completely demolished by AI: the visual arts. So when I first started my undergraduate in engineering approximately 15 years ago, I tried to convince every single one of my artist friends that AI was a legitimate threat to art. And of course, they didn't believe me. Because art is the human endeavor. But I pointed...
Yeah, that's such bollocks. You can literally nail a banana on a wall, and this is art somehow. Now, it might be that I don't understand something, Acolytes. I prefer art that actually has some purpose, some actual grit behind it. Take myself, the SmilingLich, effing himself. This is a fucking work of art. This is the interpretation that I didn't draw this, Acolytes, by the way, just saying, Acolytes, this... If I show my full form, you go insane, so I have to avoid that. But this is purpose behind every single stroke. And the artist that actually did this, well, she will get way more of this stuff, or she has to do way more of it after I actually, well, you know, if you know. And a banana on the wall has nothing. It's nothing compared to this. And yet, the banana on the wall is worth more. So what I want to say with this is, art is basically an NFT for rich people.
To one very specific thing. Since the 20th century, the art industry had lost all standards. We were in the era of Jackson Pollock, who was famous for randomly throwing paint onto a canvas. One of artist Kazimir Malevich's most famous paintings from 1915 was literally a black square. In 2010, a sculptor named Marcel Waldorf won an award for his sculpture of a woman urinating. Essentially, the idea that artistic beauty is in the eye of the beholder is kind of the prevailing theory right now. You couldn't just evaluate art and just say whether or not it was good or bad. This allowed artists to do just about anything and make up a reason for why it's art. But the moment AI art exploded onto the scene, the artists faced a major problem. And that problem actually had nothing to do with artistic skill, and it had nothing to do with technology. It was actually a philosophical problem. If artistic beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it is actually impossible to justify that human art is any better than AI art. Essentially, they had no way to justify their own existence because they gave up their standards over 100 years ago. And the lack of standards that allowed their artistic industry to exist was now being reinterpreted to justify that human artists were no longer necessary. Because without standards, AI art is just as good as anything else. This led to a lot of panicking artists turning to really poorly thought out metrics. Things like AI art had no soul, or AI art had no artistic intention behind its choices. I wanted to see how valid these metrics really were, so I conducted a bit of an experiment-ish interview with a lot of the detractors of AI art, specifically about Jackson Pollock and his work. The experiment was really simple. I showed them two images. One of them was an AI-generated painting. Usually I chose some sort of like fantasy landscape painting like this. The other one is one of Jackson Pollock's paintings. And I asked a very simple question. Do you
Wait. Give me a moment here. No. I think the left one is AI. No, I think it's AI. The right one... No, I think he lies here. I think that this doesn't look like AI. This does. Because it has the same patterns repeating. Yeah, basically, yeah. I think, or that's the theory of mine.
Believe that this painting has artistic value and this painting doesn't. And they always said yes. So the natural follow-up was always, please explain why. And this is where they started stumbling over their words. They said things like, there's clear purpose behind the Pollock painting. The Pollock painting actually has like a human soul. You can clearly see the intent behind the Pollock painting and all these sorts of weird random reasons. And even as they stumbled over their words, I always gave them the chance to take back what they said. Something like, if you can't come up with a reason, you can just take it back and just say the two paintings are equal or something like that. But for like the 100 people I interviewed, they never took it back. They always claimed that the Pollock painting clearly had intent and value and was more interesting, and AI art simply wasn't. So you can just imagine their panic when I revealed to them that that Pollock painting they just gassed up was made by AI. I generated that image a couple years back using ChatGPT specifically to run this experiment. And you can believe me, the backpedaling that they tried to do was absolutely painful. And from here I asked them
okay, good. I think I was wrong about the other painting, that it wasn't AI. Maybe I was, but I think the patterns, there are a few patterns that just repeated. On the right painting, either it's really good AI, Or I just didn't recognize it. It's possible.
Very simple question. Based on what you know now, will you admit that AI art has real artistic value? And like half of them just stormed out before they even had a chance to answer because they knew they couldn't answer without completely destroying their beliefs. If they answered yes, they had to admit that AI art was actually valuable. And if they answered no, they had to admit that they lied. They were told that an image, in this case the AI Pollock image, was valuable simply because Jackson Pollock made it. And from there, they just reverse engineered any reason they wanted to justify why they...
Yeah, it's also just because people think it's valuable. Art is just... I love art. I love art with purpose behind it. And I have nothing against the AI art if it's actually good. I don't care about the acolytes. But there has to be a purpose behind it. As I said, I just don't give a fuck about a banana thrown on a wall or just some fucking paint splitters or AI art at that point that just purely copied and made by freaking AI that has no fucking idea what's behind it. Simple as that.
The image was valuable. That sounds familiar. Maybe like a casting director who listens to a voice actor he's friends with and just so happens to hear that he's the best. But everyone knows it's just the Emperor's new clothes. You know that story of the Emperor dancing around in his underwear and everyone has to pretend he's wearing pretty clothes because they don't want to get beheaded? We look upon a picture of paint thrown on a wall and the artists demand that you pretend it's valuable. But when you show a coal miner a picture of a black square and tell him that it's more valuable than his entire career of mining for coal, when you tell a 9-to-5 office worker that he's uncultured and uncivilized because he doesn't respect the artistic value of a painting of literally nothing, when you stop considering what the common man thinks is good and demand that your art be respected through either nonsensical standards or even just blatant lies, do not be surprised when the common man cheers for your destruction. And
on point. I agree with him 100%. Good point. Yes, on effing point. Especially the fucking thing with the miner. I didn't think about the point. This is genius. Thank you. Thank you for just... Yes.
And unfortunately, this is where the voice acting industry finds themselves now. We've used up all our goodwill in the SAG-AFTRA strike. We've stopped using the same metrics that the audience uses to decide what is a good product. We've blatantly attacked and disregarded the gamers. So do not be surprised when the gamers cheer as AI destroys the entire voiceover industry that has been built on a lie. And by the way, for the few voice actors that are still watching out there, I'm not even saying that casting directors are bad at their jobs. Many casting directors I know are actually amazing at their jobs. But what I am saying is that if you cast someone for a job, you better be able to justify it to the audience. Because casting is effectively deciding who gets to represent your product. So if you end up casting someone who attacks the gamers, is a bully, is threatening, or is just blatantly hostile, I guarantee you won't be able to justify that. Now, since we've talked a lot about blacklists, I just wanted to leave something with the gamers that is actually really important and can help you take back your games from some of the more malicious players of the industry. The real blacklist belongs to the gamers. This is really important to understand because as a collective, you gamers have a blacklist that is far more powerful than anything else in the industry. And it's actually really easy to use. So say there's a voice actor that you think doesn't represent what you want the gaming industry to be. You simply need to take 2 very easy steps. Step 1, don't buy their games. Super easy, right? If they're in a game and you don't want them to represent the industry, just simply refuse to buy their games. The companies will notice. And frankly, you guys have done a great job of that in the past, taking down a whole bunch of games that you all felt were not really what you wanted. Honestly, it's kind of scary how good you guys are at that. Step 2, let the companies know why you're not buying their games. When a company announces their game on Twitter, for example, simply make a straightforward and simple statement. Something like, due to how this person bullies their fellow voice actors, I will no longer be buying games that feature them. Or, I believe that this person does not represent what I want from the gaming industry, and I will no longer be buying games that...
Yeah, the thing is, most people ignore that because a lot of people talk but don't actually do it afterwards. So, you know, this is... just don't buy this effing shit. And after... I mean, you can write them down, hey, I won't buy it because, yes, that's fine. And then don't buy it, actually don't buy it. And Acolytes, I'm not saying that it's... I'm not innocent in that point. Maybe... I mean, I'm clean, quote-unquote, for a few years right now. But, yeah. F that.
That feature them. But the next part is really important. Do not be lulled into a bad faith conversation. If someone responds to your post with insults or hatred, simply ignore them. Do not turn your statements into bullying, and definitely do not turn them into threats, doxing, or harassment. The arts...
Correctly, do not fight the rules that your enemy wants you to fight, because then you will lose. Fight on your own ground, on your own morality. And then the people that actually hear you out can decide what the fuck they actually believe.
Industries are really good at ignoring criticism if they can turn it into something worse. Do not give them an excuse to ignore your criticism.
Exactly.
Simply make the straightforward statement with no bullying and no insults and walk away. I guarantee you the companies will notice, because at the end of the day, you guys are the ones paying them. And if you guys stop paying them, you bet they will fix things immediately. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Get out there and go change the industry for the better. In the way...
A very wise man. I'm gonna be honest, this is just well done, well said, well everything. And yeah, just a voice actors at this point. Simple as that. And I'm not even sad about it, to be completely honest. I mean, yes, there will be voice actors that are innocent that get in the crossfire, but well, it is what it is. A lot of innocents got actually effed over because of this, so it's just the next one, sadly. But this is life. As it is, acolytes, good night.